I want to get to the details though, and how bad this really has been conducted. I've been listening to a lot of experts on this because I'm not a lawyer, but I want to start with the response that that Letitia James gave to these guys.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. The president's actions are a grave violation of our constitutional order and have drawn sharp criticism from members of both parties. His decision to fire a United States attorney who refused to bring charges against me and replace them with someone who is blindly loyal not to the law, but to the president is antithetical to the bedrock principles of our country. This is the time for leaders on both sides of the aisle to speak out against this blatant perversion of our system of justice. I stand strongly behind my office's litigation against the Trump Organization. We conducted a 2-year investigation based on the facts and evidence, not politics. Judges have upheld the trial court's finding that Donald Trump, his company, and his 2 sons are liable for fraud. I'm a proud woman of faith, and I know that faith and fear cannot share the same space. And so today, I'm not fearful. I'm fearless. And as my faith teaches me, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. We will fight these baseless charges aggressively, and my office will continue to fiercely protect New Yorkers and their rights. And I will continue to do my job.
This is what Donald Trump and this fascist MAGA party hates about Letitia James. She speaks forcefully, she speaks directly, and she speaks passionately about how wrong they are, gives the facts, points out everything that's there. It's a level of intelligence and directness and anger. Let's keep it real. You get to have that versus stupidity, flailing, and lies. It's so stark. It's embarrassing if Donald Trump is the guy that you're backing, so therefore you have to come up with something else that you're so upset with her about to try and get to this backdoor prosecution. The one problem I think James Comey and Letitia James have is they continue to expect this country to live in factual judicial processes. We'll see how long that lasts. But I do want to show you guys someone else. Liz Oyer. She's shedding some light on how this whole indictment came down with Letitia James and how JV it really is.
Hey everybody, there are some very scary forces at work behind the indictment of Letitia James. I want to make sure you understand what's going on, so please watch and please share. I'm Liz Oyer, the former pardon attorney for the Department of Justice. Letitia James is the Attorney General of New York. Donald Trump hates her because she sued him for fraud and won. As payback, he ordered the Justice Department to prosecute her. A big problem for Donald Trump was that he couldn't find any legitimate prosecutor who was willing to bring the case. So once again, he brought in Lindsay Halligan, the sham prosecutor who indicted James Comey, to get the job done. Halligan charged James with lying on a mortgage application to get a better interest rate, which allegedly saved her $18,000. I don't know if this is true or not, but even if it is not the type of case that ordinarily would be federally prosecuted. What's really disturbing about this, and what I want to focus on, is how Halligan got the information to bring the charge against James. There is a very creepy guy named Bill Pulte who Donald Trump appointed to lead an obscure government agency called the Federal Housing Finance Authority, or FHFA. FHFA regulates the mortgage industry, so it has access to a ton of non-public information about our mortgages. Pulte apparently went rifling through this information to dig up dirt on Donald Trump's enemies. He bypassed a whole bunch of rules and regulations to do this. Pulte is colluding with Ed Martin, a DOJ official who calls himself the weaponization director. I've told you about Martin before. He is an unqualified, unethical sham lawyer who is also very dangerous. Pulte and Martin are both desperate for attention from Donald Trump, so they have teamed up to build cases against his enemies in the hopes of getting a pat on the head. It is really quite pathetic and also very corrupt. Martin posted pictures of himself meeting with Lindsay Halligan this week. Then, after James was indicted, he posted this: "Promises made, promises kept." I'm sure he's hoping to be invited to Mar-a-Lago this weekend. If this weren't so dangerous, it would almost be funny. Like Vince Vaughn and Will Ferrell would have a field day with this buddy movie. But unfortunately, this is not a movie, and we have not seen the last of Pulte and Martin yet. They're also investigating Adam Schiff, Lisa Cook, and probably many others.
As I point out, Liz Oyer, who broke that down pretty clearly. I think of even aspects that other folks don't have the time to talk about on these cable news networks and these articles that folks aren't reading. But the weaponization director, he called himself, Ed Martin, the weaponization director in an administration that keeps claiming there's no weaponization of our of the DOJ to go after his political enemies. Yet he labeled himself the weaponization director. And then Bill Pulte going through all kinds of things to try and come up with something to nail this whole thing down. They honestly don't care how wild and sloppy this is. They're literally posting pictures and celebrating what it is that they said they were always going to do to Letitia James, because she got his ass really fast, though. Here's Liz Oyer. I ran this early in the year after she was dismissed of her position in the Department of Justice as the pardons attorney. One of the things that Donald Trump had an issue with Liz Oyer over was the lack of, I guess, coordination with him, lack of head nodding for him to give Mel Gibson, big time actor and big time Trump guy, to give him access to his guns again that he didn't have access to because he's a domestic violence abuser. So as she was going to testify about that, this is what happened at her house.
Perhaps the most personally upsetting part of the story is the lengths to which the leadership of the department has gone to prevent me from testifying here today. On Friday night, around 9:15, I learned that the Deputy Attorney General's office had directed the Department's Security and Emergency Planning Service to send 2 armed Special Deputy U.S. Marshals to my home to serve me with a letter. The letter was to be served at my home between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock on Friday night. I was in the car with my husband and my parents, who are sitting behind me today, when I got the news that the officers were on their way to my house, where my teenage child was home alone. Fortunately, due to the grace of a very decent person who understood how upsetting this would be to my family, I was able to confirm receipt of the letter to an email address, and the deputies were called off. The letter had been emailed to me just before 8 o'clock that night. At no point did Mr. Blanche's staff pick up the phone and call me before they sent armed deputies to my home. The letter was a warning to me about the risks of testifying here today. But I am here because I will not be bullied into concealing the ongoing corruption and abuse of power at the Department of Justice. DOJ is entrusted with keeping us safe, upholding the rule of law, and protecting our civil rights. It is not a personal favor bank for the president. Its career employees are not the president's personal debt collectors. I see only Democratic members here today, but this is not a partisan issue. It should alarm all Americans that the leadership of the Department of Justice appears to value political loyalty above the fair and responsible administration of justice. It should offend all Americans that our leaders are treating public servants with a lack of basic decency and humanity.
The threats were going no matter which way or who it is, as long as you're not in coordination with Donald Trump and not listening to his demands and forcing all these things that he wants randomly, you're fired. And then afterwards, when you're going to testify about that wrongful firing, you get armed agents being sent to your house. That's Liz Oyer's story. This is her talking about what it is that Lindsay Halligan, who had to be put in place because no one else wanted to take this case against Letitia James. This is how Lindsay Halligan, I guess, presented the beginnings of her case.
What sticks out to you about this case and what we saw in court today?
Yeah, there are so many unusual things about this case that it's hard to know where to start. I'll start with the fact that the lead prosecutor who got this indictment is a very inexperienced official who has never prosecuted a case before. So she had to bring in a pair of prosecutors from North Carolina to sit in the courtroom with her and do the talking at today's hearing. These lawyers are U.S. attorneys, but they don't even work in the Virginia office where this case is being prosecuted. They were imported from another office because literally nobody in the Virginia office wants to work on this case. We did get a preview at this hearing today of what types of arguments Comey's defense lawyers will be making, and there are some serious grounds to potentially seek dismissal of the case before it even gets to a jury. They're going to be arguing that this was a vindictive prosecution that was politically motivated. They're going to be arguing that the U.S. attorney who I referred to was not legally appointed and didn't even have the authority to bring this indictment. So there are going to be lots of grounds that the court could look at to potentially throw out this case before it even makes it to that January trial date.
Lindsay Halligan needed help. She didn't know what she was doing. She needed help in filing this stuff. Other folks in that U.S. attorney's office that she now heads didn't want to help her ass out. I'm not going to put my name on this trash. You want me to destroy my career and my reputation over this guy telling you what to do and when to do it and how much to do of it? Are you serious? She sucks. She doesn't know what she's doing. He had to go and get the greenest of green people who's never done anything like this to carry out his political retribution plans. And I guess they still think this is going to work out for them. I'm really not sure how. But earlier on, there was one of those folks talking about how they said promises made, promises kept. This was a promise that Mike Davis, I've run this a couple times because looking at his face just shows you why he's so jealous and upset of anyone like Letitia James. This is the promise that they were making, and see if it's based in any kind of legalities, normalcies, or actual prosecutorial processes.
Just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term, because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights. It's not going to happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike, this isn't the same Trump administration. Stop messing around. Don't rig elections. Don't illegally vote. Don't try the funny business, because we know the team this time and they are not effing around.
We know the team this time is full of criminals willing to follow this criminal's approach to things. They're not effing around. But Mike Davis, with his sorry, puny ass, wants to keep talking about it. We're coming for you, Big Tish. Mike Davis to get his ass kicked anytime he wants to have some tough talk to anyone to their face, rather than on the Benny Johnson or Thompson show, whatever the hell that guy's name is. These sorry ass, weak sumbitches. Big tough guys. I bet when he has a keyboard in front of him, he's really tough then, man. He really puts out the big ones then. Sorry ass.